against the Prime Minister to be adjourned. Worsens. The army stands by while the Prime Minister and the Chief Justice battle for power. If Nawaz Sharif is found guilty of contempt of court, it could lead to his disqualification as Prime Minister. But uncertainty and ISIS in Pakistan took an ugly turn today. Crowds of government supporters chanting slogans against the Chief Justice stormed the Supreme Court building and brought proceedings to a halt. Police and security forces deployed at the Supreme Court stood by and did nothing. The upshot of all this was that a critical contempt of court case faced by Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif has been adjourned. A senior government minister has told the BBC he condemned the disruption of the court hearing and had personally apologized to the Chief Justice. It's the latest in a series of run-ins between the supporters of Pakistani Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif and the judiciary. Nawaz Sharif was elected in February with a large parliamentary majority, but having been sacked from the job once before, he spent much of his time trying to strengthen the Prime Minister's powers in relation both to the President and the judiciary. This latest battle began when Mr. Sharif clashed with his Chief Justice, Sajjad Ali Shah, over the appointment of judges to the Supreme Court. Nawaz Sharif allegedly made a defamatory remark about the Supreme Court, and Mr. Ali Shah last week duly charged him with contempt of court. If convicted, Mr. Sharif would be obliged to step down as Prime Minister. So his government rushed through a bill to allow the Prime Minister the right of appeal. But then the President, Farooq Al-Ghari, declined to sign that into law. Mr. Sharif then threatened to impeach the President. At this point, the army stepped in. Chief of Staff Jahangir Karamat persuaded both sides to accept a cooling-off period. That cooling-off period was up today, when the Prime Minister again had to appear in the Supreme Court. As our Islamabad correspondent, Phil Goodwin reports, it was then that the battle started to hot up again.
Nawaz Sharif's party, which blames the Chief Justice for the crisis in the country by hearing cases against the Prime Minister, thinks he's on the way out. Party supporters were in a triumphant mood outside the court as the proceedings were due to begin. A struggle has emerged between the Supreme Court judges over the Chief Justice. Some have ruled that he's suspended from office. The new controversy came just as a contempt case against the Prime Minister was due to resume, which could lead to his disqualification as Prime Minister if he's found guilty.
Earlier in the week, Nawaz Sharif's government was dreading this day, but now with the Supreme Court in open turmoil about the Chief Justice, there's renewed vigour, and there have been extraordinary scenes.
The trouble started when one of Nawaz Sharif's politicians clambered from the crowd over the gates to get inside, and the crowd followed. In the excitement, others pushed through the gates and ran towards the court. The police and security forces in riot gear stood by and did nothing. Orders to disperse the crowd never came. There's always reluctance to do anything to anger the governing party, even when they're storming towards the Supreme Court. A few members of the crowd got into the court building and some ran onto the roof of the entrance, leading chants against the Chief Justice. The government has been insisting that it respects the court. The message does not seem to have got through to its supporters. Amid the commotion, with court workers looking on in amazement, someone ran to the courtroom to warn the judges.
One gentleman entered and he said that the court premises have been raided and there are thousands of people coming inside.
The contempt case had only just started. Nawaz Sharif's supporters dispersed, throwing fireworks. They think the government's winning the confrontation with the judiciary, which has been threatening to spin out of control for several weeks. Opposition politicians say the trouble was organised by the government to intimidate the court and buy time for the Prime Minister. And the constitutional crisis is continuing to damage Pakistan's institutions. Phil Goodwin, BBC News, Islamabad.
And joining me now on the line from Islamabad is Ijaz-ul-Haq, the son of the late President Zia-ul-Haq, and now a senior vice president of the governing party, the Muslim League. Mr. ul-Haq, thank you very much for joining us. Earlier on The World Today, Mushab Hussain, the government's information minister, said that he condemned the action of the crowds at the Supreme Court and had apologized to the Chief Justice. Is that a position that you would support?
I think the entire country is shocked today to see as to what has happened in the Supreme Court building. I think it was a spontaneous response from the people who were very keenly following the proceedings of the Supreme Court today. And I would also add in over here that it is free for all at this stage, and maybe the opposition also, members of the opposition or the public, which stormed into the Supreme Court building, Anybody could have been there to create this situation, but the entire country after this has happened is in a shock, and we condemn what has happened, and as the government has apologized to the Chief Justice, we think that situation should take a turn for the better now.
Mr. Al-Haq, as a result of today's unfortunate events, do you think that the stalemate which has paralyzed Pakistan for the last few weeks between the Supreme Court and the government will now begin to be broken? Is there likely to be some kind of resolution of the situation?
I think what we heard from that the army brokered a peace for a little while, and the Supreme Court then started hearing the cases against the Prime Minister. He appeared before the court twice and apologized to the court also. What has happened now is that what we have heard recently in the last few hours is that one of the judges of the Supreme Court has called the full bench to resume on the 1st of December, and they will be then taking the decision as to what is going to happen.
I think I heard you saying that the Prime Minister apologized to the Supreme Court. We're seeing pictures at the moment of the scenes outside the Supreme Court earlier today. That apology, will that be enough, do you think, for the contempt of court proceedings against him to be dropped?
I think this is unprecedented in the history of Pakistan, and I think that the Prime Minister himself appearing before the court twice and apologizing for he said that he is sorry if he has hurt the feelings of the court. He was not did not mean to hurt the feelings of the court, and he said if anybody is hurt, he is sorry. I think at that stage it should have been accepted, and then we would have been in peace. Now at the moment, what we see is that the institutions are in a loggerhead against each other, and the situation is taking a turn for the worse on an hourly basis.
Mr. Ijaz Ul-Haq, in the standoff between the institution of the Prime Minister and the institution of the Supreme Court, the judiciary, it seems that the Prime Minister at the last minute has blinked, has backed down. Is that a correct interpretation?
We feel it's the other way around. I think the Prime Minister was very calm and quiet for the last few days. We had the normal proceedings of the Parliament. And actually, initially, as you may have heard, that there was a move of the resolution to the Privileges Committee of the Parliament, where the Chief Justice was going to be asked to come and give an explanation, but that was held off after the peace was brokered, and now the situation as to what has happened today, the entire country is in a shock, and there is a stalemate. I think better sense has to prevail sooner or later.
Mr. Ijaz Ul-Haq, Vice President of the Muslim League, thank you very much for joining us from Islamabad. And a short while ago, as I said earlier, I interviewed Pakistan's Information Minister, Mushad Hussain, who's also a close advisor to the Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif, and I asked him for his reaction to the turn of events today.
Pakistan strongly regrets, strongly condemns this action, and this happened not in a pre-planned manner. It was one of those situations which was brought about by an extraordinary interest in an extraordinary case where there's tremendous public interest, and there was a problem of getting into the court because of the strict control over entry. So obviously this situation doesn't suit or benefit the government, and we have ordered an inquiry into it. I personally went to the residence of the Chief Justice to express the regret of the government, and so did the law advisor to the Prime Minister, Mr. S.M. Zafar. So we are very clear about that. The police has been ordered to register cases against those responsible, who will be arrested and punished if found guilty.
Mr. Hussain, can I interpret that as meaning that you apologized to the Chief Justice when you went to see him, because government supporters were apparently chanting ugly slogans against the Chief Justice?
Yes, we did apologize for this thing. It's an unfortunate situation, which was certainly not pre-planned. The situation just got out of hand at a local level, and the government or the ruling party had nothing to do with it. And since we feel that this should not have happened, it was an unfortunate incident, and it was caused and brought about by a tremendous public interest in this court case.
That was Pakistan's Information Minister, Mushad Hussain, talking to me earlier. And we'll have the latest news.